Welcome back to Sky Circus, and this time I'm going to read part 3 of chapter 1. Her fingers shook as she turned the pages, her eyes skimming odd images and phrases. The notebook seemed to be an attempt to document the various characteristics of flight. It was filled with diary entries, drawings, collages, diagrams, and sketches of birds. Scattered charts of weight-to-wing ratios were mixed with graphs and maps plotting the wind currents in the skies over England, and tinted images ripped from magazines and newspapers, depicting angels, sphinxes, and harpies. On one page there was even an illustration, ripped out of a children's book, of Icarus and Daedalus, with their wax and feather wings, flying too close to the sun. She would need some time to take it all in, and she needed to find out who'd sent it. Surely no one in the house would trouble to deposit a present on the doorstep, would they? But where else could Mamma's notebook have come from? It couldn't have been left by someone local, because no one in the area had known Mamma. She had died before they'd moved here. What's more, Papa made sure they kept themselves to themselves, so it seemed unlikely there were any neighbours or villagers who would even have known it was Lily's birthday. 2 gifts, the card had said, and yet this was only one. Perhaps there was another clue in the box. She searched among the green tissue paper, but there was nothing else. Still pondering these conundrums, Lily descended the porch steps and stared out along the length of the driveway, hoping for some sign of where the mysterious delivery may have come from. But all she saw was Captain Springer, the mechanical odd-jobsman and driver, raking the front lawn. The cogs and springs of his arms and legs were jittering and chugging as he gathered leaves in one big, neat pile. The peeling paint on his metal chassis was almost the same rusty red colour as the autumnal trees. Lily put her fingers in her mouth and whistled her loudest wolf whistle to get his attention. Captain Springer stopped his raking and turned his head, the rims of his large goggly eyes whirring around as his pupils focused on her. "Did anyone just call at the house?" Lily shouted. Captain Springer shook his head. It rattled loosely on the gimbal joint in his neck. "Bless my bolts, no. Not for the whole afternoon. Why? Has something happened?" Lily wondered if she should tell him about the present, but then decided against it. "Nothing in particular," she said. Captain Springer tutted and returned to his task. Lily picked up the hat box and went back inside, shutting the door behind her. She stood in the front hall for a good few seconds, stroking her fingers across the box's lid and pondering the notebook and card. She should probably find somewhere to look at them properly before dinner. The grandfather clock beside the door to the front parlour read 5:35. She had until 6, when people would start to arrive for the party. If she really wanted to get some reading done, it would have to be somewhere private, where no one would look for her, and she knew the exact spot. With the hat box under one arm, Lily ascended the grand staircase and made her way along the landing. She passed the library and then Papa's office, where the portrait of Mamma stared down at her from over the fireplace. She crossed in front of the closed door to Robert's room and heard him arguing with Malkin inside. "I'm trying to perform a delicate operation here," Robert was saying. "Then let me help," Malkin replied. "No, you'll only get fox fur in the workings or chew something valuable. I will not. You're gnawing at my trouser leg right now." "Well, I do need to keep my teeth sharp, and I think you should know you positively reek of mothballs." Lily didn't hear Robert's reply, for she continued her way, past the back bathroom and the linen closet. At the end of the passage, she reached for a glass doorknob set at hand height into the wallpaper. Turning it, she stepped into a secret stairwell that ran up the back of the house. Lily climbed the steep staircase, avoiding the mechanical's quarters on the highest landing, before finally reaching a set of wooden steps that led under the eaves of the roof into a tower room at the very top of the house. There, dusty wooden floorboards stretched out beneath 4 big arched windows that faced out to the north, south, east, and west. Set before the eastern window was a telescope attached to a tripod, which Lily, Robert, and Papa sometimes used for stargazing. At the opposite end of the room, a sun-faded rug spread across the floor beneath the western window. On it sat an old armchair, with upholstery that looked like it had survived a vicious squirrel attack, but had actually only been mauled by Malkin. Next to the chair was a steamer trunk that Lily and Robert used as a coffee table. Its top was crowded with stacks of books, half-drunk cups of tea, and an old oil lamp. When Lily and Robert had first made his room their den, Lily had busily decorated the walls with copper plate etchings from her most gruesome penny dreadfuls, pinning them onto the bare bricks around the chair. There were 4 illustrations from the Varney the Vampire versus the Air Pirates, and 6 from Spring-Heeled Jack Battles the Spider Monsters, a particular favourite series of Lily's since she'd learned her friend Anna Quinn had penned a few issues. Each grisly page had been liberally doused in blood-red paint to make them even gorier. Lily had used a whole tube of red from her young lady's watercolour set to paint them, and most of the pins in her goodly seamstress's sewing kit to fix them to the wall. Those past birthday gifts from Papa had come in useful after all. The illustrations flapped in the wind as Lily opened the nearest window to let in a little air. She dropped the hat box beside the armchair and sat down. Cradling the red notebook in her lap, she opened it to the first full page of writing. On the top line, her mamma had scribbled the day and date and an opening entry. Sunday the 1st of September, 1867, the Fairfax residence. A new flyology. This notebook is inspired by the writings of Ada Lovelace, mechanist extraordinaire, specifically her innovative study flyology, in which she first proposed the creation of clockwork-powered winged creatures, ornithopters, that mimicked the flight of birds. Within these pages, I intend to expand on her theories, shepherding my own ideas into fruition so that they might soar to the great heights enjoyed by Ada before the end of this most marvellous century. Not only will I record my day-to-day progress in this endeavour, but I will also document the trials I faced as one of the first women studying in the mechanical field, an area dominated by men. My name is Grace Rose Fairfax, and this is my story. As Lily read, a lump formed in her throat. At points her eyes blurred, and she lost focus. It was almost too much to bear to think she could meet Mamma again through the pages of this red notebook. Each sentence felt like an invitation she hadn't expected to receive, to a conversation she'd never known she could have. How long was Mamma working on the flyology project? Had she ever managed to make it a reality? Papa had certainly never mentioned it, nor this notebook. So who had sent it? Perhaps the second clue the riddle mentioned would offer an answer when it finally arrived. Come to think of it, Papa hadn't said much about the fact that Mamma had been a mechanist either. He had alluded to it in passing, but he'd never gone into detail. Lily longed to ask him about his and Mamma's life together, but she was afraid talk of the past might upset him, and she never seemed to hit on the right moment. Now, here, between the pages of this red notebook, she might find the answers she'd been searching for to the questions that burned so strongly in her heart. A heart that broke on that cold October day 7 years ago when Mamma died. Lily's hand strayed to her chest, and she felt for the soft outline of her scars, cuts she once thought had been made by shattering glass during the accident that had gravely injured her and killed Mamma, but were in actual fact from the transplant operation when the cog heart had been knitted into her body. Those raw wounds had healed over long ago, but the ghostly pain and loss they'd ushered in still ached within her, and Lily didn't feel like reliving those emotions right now. Not on her birthday. She took her hand from her chest and closed the notebook. As she did so, a single sheet of scalloped card fell from the end papers, fluttering to the floor like a feather and coming to rest at her feet. She bent down to pick it up, turning it over to examine it. Etched on its front in silver and gold was an image of a girl in a frilly tutu and ballet shoes. From the picture it was hard to tell the girl's age, but she looked to be around 15 years old. Her long, languid arms were spread wide above her head, and stretched out behind them was the enormous set of mechanical wings. The wings flowed with the girl's back, as if they were part of her body. There every feather, cog and wire was picked out in ink, and around them a set of curlicued words was arranged. It was a poster for a sky circus. Underneath the poster was a note for Lily. This VIP ticket entitles Lily Hartman and 3 friends to visit us and receive answers. P.S. Angelique would like to meet you after the show. Could this be the second clue? Strange. Lily knew no one named Angelique, nor any circus performers, and she was entirely unfamiliar with Slimwood's stupendous sky circus, whatever that was. But to discover a hybrid girl with wings wanted to meet her, right after learning about Mama's flyology project, and to find the promise of answers in the same invitation, well, that was just too intriguing. Hybrids weren't common, and Lily had never encountered one of her own age before. In fact, the truth was she'd only ever met 2. Horrible, eyeless men named Roach and Mold, who tried to kill her. Otherwise, she'd no idea how many more existed in the world. The rest, she imagined, were in all likelihood hidden away, kept closeted from sight, as she was, so as not to disturb the normal populace. That being probable, it was nice to see a girl who, at least in this picture, was displaying her difference and seemed proud of it. Lily hoped her wings were real, and not just fancy dress or fantasy. How had she ended up in the circus in the first place? And was there a connection between her and Mama? She peered closer at the girl's picture, but her face held no answers. It was merely a mystery dissolving into print marks. There was only one way to discover the truth. She would have to go to the Sky Circus tonight. It would be her only chance to speak with Angelique. From its rather unpromising start, this birthday was turning out to be far more interesting than she'd expected. She scanned the ticket again. The address was a mystery, but the sun had barely started to set. If the circus was in Bracken Bridge, she would probably still be able to see it from her tower window. She stood and pressed her eye to the end of the telescope. Her heart ticked loudly as she swung the lens around, scanning the countryside. In the sky, the grey, scudding clouds were rimmed with gold, like sweat stains on the silk lining of an old hat. A thin yellow fog rose from the waters of the River Bracken and wound its way through the village, where the crowns of the trees, blazing a bright autumnal red, interrupted the jagged lines of the rooftops. In the meadow at the far end of the village, half hidden by the scrub and woodland, a strand of gold flashed in the quickening twilight. Lily focused in on it. It was a winged figurehead on the front of a tethered skyship. A hot air balloon bobbed above it. The red and white striped silks pulsed softly like a glowworm in the gloaming, spilling out strands of light over the top of an enormous canvas tent and a high spiked circular wooden fence plastered with colourful posters. Crowds of people were already wading through the knee-high fog to queue up outside the kiosk and gated entranceway of what had been the Sky Circus. Right, I'll be back with you tomorrow for chapter 2.